great from the county standpoint.
Yeah,
I'm just looking
sure,
at nothing was going on. Yeah, they're cool, right? But it took me, I'm waiting. I finally contacted them yesterday. I said, where are these IDs? I ordered them 2 weeks ago. Well, I needed an authorization letter, which Claudia gave me from the town, because obviously they don't want to get IDs. But I was waiting, nobody's going to contact me. 2 weeks later, you don't contact me, they tell me I needed this letter. So finally they did it, now they're being shocked. I'm like, you know, it takes all this time, it was something simple.
Yeah, you always have to give them right out.
Yeah, something simple.
Yeah.
Alex Demetrius was back. I felt sorry for him.
Oh, yeah, he hasn't shown up.
Oh, he did?
No, not yet.
He's
And then tell them you can working on it.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Mount Olive Township Workshop and Council meeting for July 11, 2017. If you would please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for a moment of silence for all the men and women that serve and protect us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Susan, would you read the Open Public Meetings Act, please?
According to the Open Public Meetings Act, adequate notice of this meeting has been given to the Daily Record. Notice has been posted in the Municipal Building, 204 Flanders Drakestown Road, Bud Lake, New Jersey, and notices were sent to those requesting the same.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mr. Amianda, Mr. Ferrante, Mrs. Labow.
Here.
Mr. Mania.
Here.
Mr. Stewart.
Here.
Mr. Roman.
Here.
Mr. Nacastro.
Here. We have items for discussion. The first item is the noise ordinance. Bob had sent out the information on the noise ordinance with the health department change last year, I believe, to coincide with the state's policy, and we wanted to bring that up just to make everybody aware of the weekends that are allowed to do work. I didn't know if in case anybody, Bob, was concerned if people call, Bob, you want to?
Yeah, I think the issue for the governing body is there's a lot of confusion, as I indicated, and some stuff that Fred's got to work on. The real issue to the governing body is whether, in fact, there's a concern over regulation on construction activity on Saturday and Sunday. And there's been a history in the town where it's been allowed and not allowed and allowed and not allowed. It depends upon people in office at that point in time. So the reason I'm raising the question right now is under the new ordinance, it is now allowed on Saturday and Sunday. And the governing body may want to, if they want to restrict that somewhat, bring it up, and then Fred can look at that and see what options are available. Outside of the noise ordinance, the question there would be to basically put it over in the other codes that are going to be enforced by the police department, because enforcing a noise ordinance is extremely difficult. You have to be a specialist in handling a dB meter and go to training and everything else. So if you have a concern, now's the time to bring it up for discussion, and we'll see if we can craft an ordinance that would address your concerns.
So we would have to train police officers to use that decibel meter, correct?
Or bring that somebody
Which would take them off their normal duties.
Correct.
Or you have to bring somebody else in.
And ironically, it's funny because this weekend, honestly, I just got an email from somebody asking me if they can do a roof on a Sunday. And I just sent them the ordinance that we had to show them they can, because homeowners on the weekends doing his work, but he has someone doing it.
Well, one of the interesting questions on the ordinance is the old ordinance tried to make a distinction between people using domestic tools versus commercial tools. An air gun's an air gun. But beside that point, the idea I think that they were trying to get to is the homeowner working on the weekend versus the home improvement contractor or the large contractor coming in on the weekend. And they tried to draw that distinction. Whether it's valid or not, I don't know what the history's been on it, but I noticed in the history of the law it was an interesting definitional issue. So the issue of the court governing body is there a concern, and if so, speak now so we can craft something.
If we haven't had any complaints on this, a bunch of complaints, have we, that we need to address it at this point? I mean, have people been complaining about Sunday or Saturday? I don't really know. I haven't heard anything about it, so. Mr. Roman?
I think the only concern that I would have would be on those large-scale projects that are in close proximity to residential neighborhoods, where we might want to think about weekend, hours of operation. But I am not at all inclined to restrict a homeowner whether he chooses to use his own labor or hire a contractor, as long as the work is finished by the normal 10 p.m. We have.
I think it's
no, on the weekend it's sooner.
9 to 6, I think.
9 to 6, I believe. Something like 9 to 6.
6 makes sense.
Yeah, and so I'm not at all inclined to restrict anything that a homeowner chooses to do. It's more the large-scale projects, which, you know, going forward, I think those are gonna be fewer and fewer, and far between. So I don't know how the rest of the body feels about that.
And 9 to 6 is reasonable.
Mr. Maney, and then sorry for 1 second.
Perfect example is on Route 46. There's a big project in place right now. And I live in close proximity to that project. And the noise is horrendous.
Yep.
Okay? And I can't complain during the weekdays. But I think Sundays is the Lord's Day, a day of rest. And we should all be resting. That's
Were
my
they working
feeling.
on Sunday down there on that one? John, do you know?
Pardon?
Were they working Sunday as well as?
They've been working Saturdays, Sundays, and nights.
I live two
In
streets
fact,
past them, and I
residents
can hear
from
it.
Village Green have called me complaining that they could hear the noise at 8 o'clock at night.
Well, the way we could address that, and just before Mr. Mania spoke, I asked to be heard. When Mr. Roman spoke about projects, we enter into developers agreements. So what we can do is we can highlight for you before the next developers agreement comes forward what the hours of operation will be. They have to comply with that. So in the case of, you know, this particular project, even tonight I have a minor amendment, but that's only phase 1. That's going to come to an end rather soon. There's going to be a new developers agreement coming forward, and we'll address the hours of operation before we bring it back to you.
Mr. Roman?
I didn't finish.
Mr. Maney, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I too agree with Mr. Roman. I don't want to restrict a homeowner from doing some work who works all week long and only has maybe Saturday and Sunday to work on his house.
Agreed.
Now you said in the developers agreements we can include restrictions on hours of operation, but what are the penalties when they don't follow?
Right.
Well, if they don't follow on a developer's agreement, we could shut down the project. The township engineer could shut down the project and issue a stop order. And if they violate those terms, you know, they could be in default. And in the past, it's been a while, but I've been to court when developers do not comply with the agreements. So that's what would happen.
Yeah, I mean, I hear the word can, but I think what I'd like to hear is, you know, language to the effect that, you know, especially in the hours of operations, if you violate this, you know, first offense is this, or, you know, if it's at all possible, because the can means requires us to take them to court. If there's a simple enforcement, you know, it could just be issued, you know, through regular police
The
issuance.
punitive side of it would be a close down of the project, and then it would take some type of application for them to restart it. They would lose quite a bit of time under those circumstances. But I can highlight that for the council with the very next developers agreement that comes forward.
That's the best way to handle it. I know, Tim.
Yeah, we had an issue a week ago with them working beyond the slated hours. They were informed of the hours at the pre-construction meeting, so they're very aware of when they can and can't work. Zoning was sent down there just to give them a nice warning that if we get any more complaints, we're shutting them down. So they've been warned. So if you hear something Sundays and nighttime, you let us know, because we're keeping an eye on them.
Mr. Roman?
What would happen, let's say, Saturday night, they're working, let's say 9 o'clock at night, they are still working. Can the police department just shut them down and prevent them from working, or do we have to now wait for a Monday to come along, and then we have a meeting, and then they say, oh, I'm so sorry.
No, we can shut them down. They'll get a hold of me, and I'll go over there with the police department, with a couple of police officers. We'll shut them right down. And then they won't be allowed to start work again until they meet with the township to correct the issues.
So this would, Fred, what you're saying is keep the ordinance the way it is, but we'll work with the developers agreement, so we
Right.
don't hurt the homeowners, but as new
If-
developments come in, we'll do it that way.
Correct.
That makes sense.
If
Which
we're
makes
looking
sense.
towards the project, as
Right.
the project says, Mr. Roman says, yes, then we'll
Yeah.
make sure we've got, you know, those restrictions. Generally, what I'm hearing is no activity on Sundays. Is that
Really, Sundays would be. the-
Sundays?
I strongly feel no activity on Sundays.
Fred, is there
Again.
any way that we could put in the statute under the police authority that right to shut it down on the weekends? Because I know what Tim's saying, but it's really outside the scope of the current law, because the developers agreement is not enforceable in municipal court per se. Any way that we can basically put it under police regulations that would give the police authority to go in literally under their...
I think within the developers agreement, we could have a provision that it's not just the township engineer. If the police department comes out and issues, you know, that type of stop work order, I think that would be enforceable, especially on off hours. I think we can do that.
Think so?
Yeah, we could do that, and then there
I
would
think
be provisions.
that's what needs to be done.
Okay, all right, and tonight in my report, I'm gonna talk about a limited extension for this developer, and I'm just gonna, this is a helpful discussion, because I'm certain you're gonna wanna make it conditioned upon revising the hours of operation and revising the punitive side if they don't cooperate.
Yep, it's a good time.
I mean, they have some heavy equipment there,
Right,
Fred.
it's a big
And
project.
It's
and
very
project.
noisy,
Understand
very
that.
noisy.
Yes.
Ms. Lebo?
Thank you, Mr. President. Joe, I don't know if you had told me this or someone else had said that the one day they had to move some big equipment off of that site, and they had their workers out there shutting down the traffic while they backed out this big truck. They shouldn't be doing that, especially that section's a very dangerous section of Route 46. So I was just like, oh my God. So they just sort of take a few liberties already, which happens.
Well, we have a good opportunity now
Right
with this
now,
thing,
yeah.
so we're in
Those are
a
all
good
good
position
points.
to tell them what we need, which I think
Yeah,
that's the way to go.
they should not be out there
No.
shutting down traffic.
Well, that we
If
can
they
bring up
need
there,
help,
too.
they call the police and let the police do it.
They're supposed to do
Right.
that, Ms.
Well, they
Laybow.
didn't
So we will.
do that.
I know Gene Bazinski's been very involved there, and I even spoke to him this afternoon about it, so, I'll find out exactly what happened.
All good? We're all in agreement on that then?
Mm-hmm.
Very good. Thank you. Ordinance permitting regulating billboards. Any discussion on that? You've all seen the ordinance, Mr. Rome?
Fred, could you just highlight what the changes are? Because from what I'm reading here is just verbiage that I see crossed out and just to include digital signs. Is there anything in the current ordinances that would hamper our, current signs that we have and the inability to obtain revenue from those said signs?
No, I think what the genesis of this is that right now the town land use ordinance really prohibits these electronic type billboards, and yet you can't have a blanket prohibition. So what Mr. McGarty has done is he's gone back and said there's certain areas of the township from a planning and aesthetic standpoint that these billboards, the electronic billboards, would be more acceptable. And then there's other areas of the township, say more residential in nature, where we should prohibit those, continue to prohibit the electronics, and maintain the aesthetics of the community. There's been a lot of discussions throughout the country about these billboards and signs and First Amendment rights. So I think what Mr. McGarty's doing here is he's got out in front of this to address this. There's no one necessarily knocking on our door. We have a lot of billboard activity in town right now as far as applications. And we did get some correspondence from some attorneys for a specific organization. We had some questions, but this isn't a land use application. So we looked at it. There were some minor changes that Mr. McGarty made. But this is really to keep us ahead of this and maintain some consistency, and for where we don't permit the electronics, there's a basis for it, as opposed to somebody coming in on a land use application and saying, well, I can't put this anywhere, so now what's the boundaries? And we're putting together those boundaries. And I spoke to Chuck McGarty about this a few times. I know the council president and I had a conversation as well, and I know he's also planning on coming to the public hearing to give a good overview for the governing body and the public.
Yeah. Everybody was comfortable with it from there. Any other questions on it? No discussion on the affordable housing. There was something that came through the emails for everyone, but there was no comments on it, so there's no sense. I'm not going to bring that up for discussion because it was nothing of importance. We have 3 resolutions. Anyone have any questions on any resolutions? We have 2 ordinances. Does anyone have any questions or comments on the ordinances? Nothing there. What's this one for? Oh, that's for later. You had it on there? Okay. Well, the next thing on there was the administrative report, which we somewhat discussed about, but there was the electrical request going out. It went out to the Lake Association, who in return is sending it out to all the residents, I believe. I don't know. It was here, so I didn't know if you wanted to bring it up here or later, or just Anything to bring up about it?
No, I listed it there simply as follow-up after the last
Okay.
meeting. Usually if an issue comes up from the governing body, I'll basically put it on a subsequent agenda to close the loop on it. Colleen had some questions as to whether in fact the Lake Association represented all the lake owners or all the dock owners around the area. And that was our discussion before this tonight's meeting began. Hopefully, the Lake Association is involved with those who have the active docks, active boaters.
Right.
So it went to those who were more likely to have electronics on the end of their dock.
So we're all okay with that? We got it for now? We're
Yeah.
okay? Just making sure.
Menza, Menza.
All right, any old business? Seeing none, any new business? Does anyone from the public wish to be heard in this portion or for the public meeting? Okay, then
I have a question. Do you want me to comment on the noise ordinance now or later?
whenever you feel like.
I'll do it now, get over it.
Go ahead. You know the routine.
Joe Fleischman, 34 Karen Place, Bud Lake. I agree wholeheartedly within the commercial use of buildings within town, but I really believe that we should not allow construction, large construction, on Saturdays or Sundays, both days. And the reason why is, come to my neighborhood, we are a very diverse neighborhood. We have Muslim families, we have Jewish families. We celebrate, Muslims and Jews celebrate the Sabbath on Saturday, as does most of the world. That's why the stock markets are closed around the world. So I think if a homeowner wants to do work on their house on Saturday or Sunday, that's fine. But to have large construction in theory, I just think it's disrespectful to some people. One of the biggest problems we have now is you allow for noise, you allow lawn services to start at 7:30 in the morning. In my current neighborhood, we have a lot of little new infants. There's the baby boom up in the Karen Place neighborhood. And let me tell you, at 7:30 in the morning, hopefully, I know the school buses rumble by at 20 to 7 for the high school, but that in itself can be a distraction. But I would encourage this council to not allow any heavy construction on the weekends. I just think it's fair to the diverse cross-section of the township. And especially I know where, what we have right now near the trading post, that is loud. I mean, that is loud. And I'm sure they could do their work 5 days a week. That's not gonna hurt them, and wherever else it could be. Where I live, you can hear what's going on in Waterloo Village on the weekends. It's unbelievable, because the sound travels. So I just would encourage you to take a look at that and say, hey, homeowners, you're okay, do whatever it is you do on Saturdays and Sundays, but on the weekends for major commercial construction, I would encourage you to ban it on Saturdays and Sundays.
Yeah, and that's what I just spoke to Fred about, and he'll look up and go through some of that and see what's going on and get back to us on that with the other ordinances and things.
I think that's fair, too.
Unfortunately, Joe, I respectfully disagree.
Everyone's allowed to disagree.
But what we could look at, though, at least survey a little bit about, you could
Right.
revisit some of the hours or some of the limitations, or if it's, if it's continuous, or if it's just isolated, things like that. But we can come back.
We can look into and
to
see
work
what
with
we can
Mr.
come up
Casey.
with.
Fred, could we look at some model ordinances?
Sure.
from
Yeah,
Other
absolutely. Let's look at what the
municipalities?
other ones are doing and see what they come up with.
Model
as well.
ordinance that you have here, for instance, very specifically indicates landscaping operations. And on the weekends, it's supposed to be 9 to 6.
Right, that's late, that's what I thought. It wasn't 7:30, it's supposed to be 9.
During the week, the weekdays, it's 7.
Yeah, during the week.
It starts there, but on the weekend, it's supposed to be 9. But they are very specifically enumerated in the new state standard in terms of, and this ordinance you've got is the only one allowed in the state of New Jersey, because the Department of Health says this is the ordinance you will use. You can make it stricter, you can't make it
less.
looser.
Right.
Right.
For a better term.
And I think one of the issues that ends up happening on the weekends is a lot of residents and contractors with lawn service do not know And I think it's something that we need to educate the police department, so that way if a resident does call to complain, police dispatch does know that there is a restriction. So I think it's a matter of education.
Fred, do we give the police department a copy of our ordinance? Is that normal?
Oh, sure. Yeah, we
Okay.
could, work with them. I mean, I don't want to speak for the police department, but generally, we like that to be the sort of the last line of defense if we have an issue.
Right,
So we don't
right.
interfere, but at least give them the right so that if there is an issue, they have the authority to take necessary steps.
Yeah, I don't think we make it a habit of, when we issue an ordinance, to send it to the police department.
Right.
I don't think that's
Right.
part of our normal
No.
course of action.
They would get the complaints anyway, right?
Yeah.
Usually the police are the ones that get the calls
Right.
and
Right.
notice anyway.
Right, but I think
So
it's-
I don't know
I-
if we're getting a lot of them to begin with, not that we shouldn't look into it, but I don't know where we
Right,
stand.
but we
with-
could get some feedback.
We can get
from
some
the police,
feedback and
too,
find out, are
sure.
we getting, how many are we
Mhm.
getting, are people complaining? And then
And again-
specifically, we can find out which landscapers, if that's the case, and notify them of the law, because maybe
Right.
they're not aware, like you said.
And I think it might be a case of just that residents don't even know that
Yeah,
they
I-
can complain.
Yeah, I mean.
Like, sure, 8 o'clock.
If you want,
why
yeah.
not?
And a lot won't complain. Like, I hear it in my neighborhood, I don't want to call the cops on my neighbor, it's not the end of the world, but that's what happens, so. Yeah, we can look into that too. All right, anyone else from the public wish to be heard in this session? Seeing none, close to the public. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Oh, did you want to speak in the public portion, or that's the next one? We're coming up. Yep, no problem. No, we go to the next meeting now, okay? That's it, we're going to open up the Mount Olive Township Council meeting for July 11th, 2017. Would you read the Open Public Meetings Act, please?
According to the Open Public Meetings Act, adequate notice of this meeting has been given to the Daily Record. Notice has been posted in the municipal building, 204 Flanders Drakestown Road, Bud Lake, New Jersey, and notices were sent to those requesting the same.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mr. Amianda, Mr. Ferrante, Mrs. Labow.
Here.
Mr. Mania,
Here.
Mr. Stewart.
Here.
Mr. Roman.
Here.
Mr. Nacastro.
Here. Ms. Slaybaugh, would you approve the minutes from the previous meeting for June 27th, workshop and public meeting?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I make a motion to approve the, let me see, was it the workshop meeting and public meeting for June 27, 2017?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Labow,
Yes.
Mr. Mania,
Yes.
Mr. Stewart.
Yes.
Mr. Roman.
Yes.
Mr. Nacastro.
Yes, we have 20 pieces of correspondence. Does anyone have anything on correspondence? Seeing none, I open the hearing to the public on ordinance number 16-2017, an ordinance of the Township of Mount Olive, County of Morris, State of New Jersey, to amend and supplement ordinance 2005-22 entitled, an ordinance of the Township of Mount Olive authorizing a lease agreement between the Township of Mount Olive and the Mount Olive Child Care and Learning Center, Inc., to extend the term of the lease and payment schedule and provide for an option for additional lease term. Mr. Mania?
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for adoption of ordinance number 16-2017, first reading, an ordinance of the Township of Mount Olive, County of Morris, and State of New Jersey, to amend and supplement ordinance 2005-22 entitled, an ordinance of the Township of Mount Olive authorizing a lease agreement between the Township of Mount Olive and the Mount Olive Child Care and Learning Center, Inc., to extend the term of the lease and payment schedule, and to provide for an option for an additional lease term.
Second.
Anyone from the public
I
wish
just
to be
want to
heard?
make a correction. It was not
Okay.
for first reading, it was for public hearing. For second, was a second reading. I heard first reading.
Did I say first reading?
No, I
Oh,
heard
I'm
Mr. Mania say
okay,
first
it's second reading.
Just want to make sure.
No problem. Anyone from the public wish to be heard on that? Seeing none, close to the public. Any council comments? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Labow,
Yes.
Mr. Mania,
Yes.
Mr. Stewart.
Yes.
Mr. Roman.
Yes.
Mr. Nacastro.
Yes. Ordinance number 16-2017 is passed on second reading, and I hereby direct the clerk to forward a copy of the same to the mayor and publish the notice of adoption as required by law. Next item on the agenda is first reading for ordinance number 17-2017, an ordinance to amend and supplement Chapter 550 Land Use to revise Article Article 7, Zoning District Use and Bulk Regulations, 550-101, subsection B and 550-103, subsections A, E, F, G, and I, to permit billboards in certain zone districts as a conditional use, and to provide specific standards for both static and digital billboards, and to identify those zone districts, wherein either static or digital billboards shall be permitted as conditional use. In addition, the ordinance amends Article 2 definitions of Chapter 550 to strike the existing definition of billboard and provide new definitions for both stagnant digital billboards, and does also amend Article 6 zoning 550-95 signs regarding billboards. Mr. Roman?
Glad you're the one that had to read all that.
Yeah.
I move that ordinance number 17-2017 be introduced by title and passed on first reading, and that a meeting be held on July 11th, 2017, at 7 p.m. at the Municipal Building, 204 Flanders Drakestown Road, Bud Lake, New Jersey, for a public hearing, consideration of second reading and passage of said ordinance, and that the clerk be directed to publish, post, and make available said ordinance in accordance with the requirements of the law.
Just a correction on here, it was wrong on the sheets. The 25th, I believe, is the next reading.
Right.
So we're on there. Anyone from the public wish to be heard on that ordinance?
Who's seconding?
Oh, I'm sorry, who seconded?
I second it.
Anyone from the public? Seeing none from the public, anyone from council discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Laybow?
Yes?
Mr. Mania?
Yes.
Mr. Stewart?
Yes.
Mr. Roman?
Yes.
Mr. Nacastro?
Yes. Mr. Stewart, we have 3 consent resolutions. Would you move 1 through 3, please?
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to move for adoption and final passage, consent resolutions 1 through 3.
Second.
Anyone from the public wish to be heard? Seeing none, close to the public. Any council discussion? I forgot about moving, but we're okay. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Laybow?
Yes.
Mr. Mania?
Yes.
Mr. Stewart?
Yes.
Mr. Roman?
Yes.
Mr. Nacastro?
Yes. Mr. Roman, would you move the bill list, please?
I move for approval of the bill list.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Laybow?
Yes.
Mr. Mania?
Yes.
Mr. Stewart?
Yes.
Mr. Roman?
Yes.
Mr. Nacastro?
Yes. Any administrative reports from Bob or Claudia? Anything?
No, sir.
Nothing to report. Any old business, anyone?
I do.
Ms. Laybow?
It's a question I have. A couple of years back, we had talked about putting solar panels in the driveway. And there's going to be the program with the state, and there was some kind of lawsuit going on that all got put on, I don't know, back burner, and it fell off the burner, or what's going on. And I was just wondering if there was any way, I guess Bob would be or Claudia might know, if there was any way we could see if we can still take care of that. From what I understand, it's a really big plus to have it. It's a huge savings in money and everything else.
It was the Morris County. I believe,
Morris
wasn't
County.
it? Morris County had a
It
lawsuit.
was
with
involved.
that.
There was a lawsuit.
Right.
Yeah, there was a big lawsuit.
But we might be able
Yeah.
to see other options if there's anything available.
Yeah, that's
I
what
don't know. For
my
solar
phone.
is.
Am I correct, Fred? There was a
That's
lawsuit.
right, right, and
Is
that was more part of a program to make money on the
Selling.
administration of
Right.
it and selling it. This
Yeah.
would be more on the receiving end,
Right.
where you be involved as the finished product to try to save money and costs,
Right.
and that's different.
Yeah, if
Because,
we can look into that
I mean, my
somehow.
phone rings off the hook with solar
Yeah, everybody
companies
wants
all the
solar.
time. So, I
They're all
mean, they must
trying.
have some kind of, maybe we should take advantage of it and
If we can look into it, that would be great.
And look at County College, I mean,
I
they
know.
have all their parking lots are covered with
Everywhere now.
those, and so,
Yeah, you
School
should-
system did it too.
Well, we should try going in the winter. It's not that great
Yeah.
when the ice slides off those panels. And
That was the
hits
big
the
problem,
cars.
yeah, I
Is
know
that-
where we worked. It's a problem because it
Yeah.
caused a lot of accidents, people falling with the ice.
Oh,
between-
really?
They haven't perfected it yet where it doesn't come through.
So,
So as it melts, it comes through and it's
It
been
comes
freezing.
through?
There was
Yeah.
lawsuits where I worked last time.
Oh,
I-
Because
really?
people are falling when they go to their cars because you can't see the
Right.
ice.
I for one would not be inclined to
So-
putting solar panels in the parking lot whatsoever.
Unless there's a newer thing that we don't know about, but
Mm-hmm.
right now, from what I saw, a lot of those, he's right, that's just it's been dangerous, but it's worth, you never know.
you never know.
never
I
know,
mean, you check it
so.
out, things are always, and the ones that have been upwarding, they had those
Right.
issues, maybe
They
they've
might have
come
fixed it
with
and had
something
new
to,
designs by now, so it's worth looking
You
into.
gotta do it like the school did, off to the side.
Yeah.
yeah, that
If
would
you
be
could.
good too.
But-
If we
Thank
buy,
you,
if
that's
we
a
buy
good
the
idea.
if we buy the property, there you go.
There
Yeah,
you go, we get all that, put a solar
exactly.
field up.
And then I just have one other thing, I
Yeah.
just wanted to address the public, just explain that we have 2 meetings every night, and the first one is our workshop meeting, and the minutes for those meetings are, they're not verbatim. they're just a summary. And then this one, the second meeting, is everything is verbatim detailed, and it's the legal one that, you know, the other one's just a discussion. So it can be confusing,
Yeah.
and I know when I
Thank
first
you
started
for
coming to
explaining
meetings,
that.
I was like, what's going on, you know? So that's why the difference in them. So when they say if you want to speak in the public portion, that's so that your opinion, your comments, your suggestions, whatever, are going to be part of the official record.
That'll be coming up shortly.
Sorry, I just had to say that,
No,
because
thank
that
you.
always
because
bothers
no,
me.
you're right. I should have explained it. Anything else? Any other old business, anyone? Any new business from anyone? Any legal matters?
Yes, Council President, just two things. First, on the affordable housing litigation that most municipalities are involved in, the township is headed towards a resolution and obtaining certification from the court that we're in compliance with our third round plan. We're going to be near the top 20% of municipalities get this done. We're working towards that, and it will not result or require the township to undertake any additional rezoning. We will not require the township to designate any areas as affordable housing because the township's done its homework, and we're steadfast with a fair position and a plan that didn't result in any changes. So we're working towards that. While we are working towards that, there's everyone else who's sort of mainstream and still left received a notice from the court that each community participating right now, for starters, has to contribute $5,000 because there's yet another expert that the court has appointed. So there's special masters, there's experts, there's your own attorney, there's your own planner, etc. But it's you know, certainly a good time to exit for all the right reasons. So we're working towards that, and I'll have updates for you. Our first step off will be towards the end of August, and then the second point will be after our revised fair share plan is adopted. Then we'll have a compliance hearing sometime in October, and we will be done for the next 10 years and compliant. Secondly, just as I mentioned earlier on the Mountain Ridge project, right now that developer and that project only has permission to do certain clearing to the site, not the next phase of construction. But in doing so, they've asked Gene Bazinski, who agrees, that it would be more functional if they could continue. What they left out of this first phase was installation of approximately 600 linear feet of a water main within Village Way, installation of the Route 46 water main crossing and hydrants to provide fire protection to the township, and a future connection for the Mountain Ridge development, and installation of storm drainage and sanitary sewers for the first phase through the third phase of the development. The engineer, Mr. Brzezinski, believes that it's really just an extension of what they're doing now, and it would be subject to them having adequate surety bonds and construction bonds posted, and it would be an amendment to the developer's agreement. Again, they can't get into phase one, but my recommendation to Mr. Brzezinski, as opposed to stopping the project for 2 weeks and trying to do this, that I would ask tonight for a motion to authorize an amendment, subject to Mr. Brzezinski's approval, to continue with this work, of course subject to posting adequate security, bonds, engineering review, and all the other terms. But in addition, based on what I heard tonight, I think we ought to make a condition to restrict the hours of operation so that there's no misconception. So, you know, I'll take a suggestion. I heard about, you know, Sundays on significant projects or, you know, certain limited hours, as well as a provision that in the event the operation goes beyond these permitted hours, there would be they would be punitive in nature. And I would say in this case, since we're working with the developer, that this part of the agreement would automatically terminate. They'd have to come back here to restart. So that would be the punitive measures. So I would just look to see if the governing body had a consensus. Do you want to limit the operation so there'd be no operations on Sundays? Is that?
That's for sure.
With this project?
For sure on that. Yeah, we were gonna look at everything else in the meantime, for sure.
Okay.
Yes, Ms. Lehman?
I have a problem with just Sundays though, because like Mr. Fleishman was
Right.
saying, Saturday too. I mean, if you're having a family over for a celebration, whatever, and that noise is deafening. I'm like 4 streets away from it.
I'm
and I
closer
can,
than you.
He's closer than me, and I can hear, I'm 3 streets from John. And it's just very, very loud. But I would say, just to kind of like make it fair, would be after they have perhaps 50% of the homes finished. You know, because when all the infrastructure's in, the infrastructure will be in at that point, and they, you know, there won't be as many houses going on. I can just hear when they start hammering, they're gonna have 4, 5, 6
Right.
houses going
And you're
at
going to
once.
have a chance, because that's another
That's
development.
another development
formal
of it.
one that we'll go forward with. Right now, it's in hours of operation, and I don't know
And that
what
project
that's going to do.
is
Sunday,
a
I can
5-year
understand.
project.
Well, this clearing, you know, should
The
be
whole
done-
project is a
Yes.
5-year
Yeah, there's
project.
phases, correct, yes.
mean, you can hear that grinding and,
I'm
Right.
assuming with all this underground work,
Correct.
and everything has to be done before the winter.
Yes.
I'm assuming that's why
Yeah.
they're working 7 days a week.
Yes.
yeah.
So certainly
probably.
you'd preclude Sundays. Do you want to limit, or you're asking to preclude Saturday? I can't say, you know,
I'm
from a
okay with
legal
it.
perspective,
I'm
you know,
okay
we
with the
might be-
Saturday the way we have our normal.
I am
hours,
too,
which is
okay,
nine-
Saturday.
9 to 6.
Okay. All right,
Yeah, I
9
think
to
Fred,
6.
make sure they know it's 9 to 6.
Right.
Yeah.
And
And if-
again, we can address it on the other phases
Right.
when we get into that with the building itself. if it
And
becomes
we
a-
would insert more punitive nature in the event. I'm not saying it happened, but it was reported that perhaps there was operations beyond those hours, and we'll address in the amendment as to how we will handle that from a punitive measure.
I have one more question. Fred, did they say anything about when they were going to do the upgrades to the road itself on Necon Road, and at the light there, they're going to be widening that a little bit or changing the direction of it?
I don't know. I could step out and call Mr. Budzinski.
Yeah, because the reason why I'm asking is now that they have what's going on now with the trucks, I don't know if you've noticed it, John, but there's a backup there already.
Right.
And, you know, you figure they have one truck, big truck here with a big, huge trailer and a backhoe on there, that's taking up equivalent to 5 cars. And
Right.
that section's not that big there. And then I don't want it getting backed up on Route 46, because when people come up over that little hill there, it's dangerous. All of a sudden, these cars are stopped, so.
If it would be okay, maybe, you know, after the reports.
Yeah.
During the reports, I'll speak to Mr. Budzinski. I want to fill him in on some of the points while everyone's here, and then let you know as to where we are. Of course, we're mindful of the fact, the plus side of this, we are getting a backup well for the township.
Right, exactly.
But understood. I'd like to just speak to him to make sure, you know, we're not going to put ourselves in a position where there's more questions.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
fine, yeah, just figure
All
out
right,
a
thank you.
timeframe.
No, that's good.
Anything else, or someone want to make, I guess you want us to accept the motion?
Yes,
How do you
but
want?
perhaps we could just do it after reports, Council President, because I
fine.
could just check
That's
with the
fine.
engineer
No
to make sure
problem.
we're okay.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. That's
Thank
my
you, Fred.
report. Thank you.
Council reports. Mrs. Laybow, anything on economic, TNR, or open space?
Nothing this week.
Mr. Maney, anything on legislative or planning?
Planning, we have a meeting Thursday evening coming up.
Okay. Board of Health, I did send a report, but
It's
It's
canceled.
canceled?
that was canceled.
On the
Okay.
board.
I do have a report from Board of Health I should read
Just
into
got
the
a memo.
records. We have our next meeting is the third Wednesday in August at 6:30 here. But just to give you an update on some of the administrative issues, they attended the Morris County Regional Public Partnership Health Meeting. They attended the advisory panel meeting for Givaudan, attended a BA's agenda department head meeting, North Jersey Health Collaborators semi-annual meeting. They also were at the Board of Trustees meetings, a public Master of Public Health student startup internship this month. Animal Control continued working with Buildings and Grounds to update and improve the dog park rules and signage. Continue to increase the patrols at Turkey Brook as well. Environmental, they attended a meeting with the owner of Jersey Girl Brewery to review the septic system impact and proposed change for their operations. Attended a meeting of the new property owners of Oakwood Village to follow up on recent solid waste violations, which we were following up with that. Attended a Carnival planning meeting to involve the township. Health education, they created and distributed posters on swimming safety to the library and contracting towns. Conducted safe food handling course at Mount Olive retail food establishments. Public health nursing, they held their clinic, 7 Mount Olive participants, 2 from other towns. Developed a nursing staff coverage policy. Senior program, special trips that included the Rockaway Mall, Lake Mohawk. The Mount Olive High School Key Club hosted the senior prom, which was the Great Gatsby theme. Several weather postponements, but they got the miniature golf finally in. Transportation to the polls to Mount Olive Senior Living Facility was offered with no takers at the time. And they still have farmers market vouchers for income-eligible seniors. And finally, the general outreach and training meetings, they updated the Facebook pages, the website, and the staff will be taking competency training as webinars through South Central Public Health Center. That's the health report. Mr. Roman, anything on Pride or
Oh,
Recreation?
wait, Joe?
Yes.
Excuse me, I had health questions.
That's right.
No, sorry. Over at with the new owners of, what's it
Yes.
called, Overlook on 206, now what was the outcome? I've had questions from residents over there that they still don't have their dumpsters.
Still don't have I don't have the answers yet on that.
Yeah,
They still work, I know,
that's
that's been like a year
amazing.
in the works. of
I know.
trying
I
to
witnessed
figure
that
out
personally.
Yeah.
Why
so
they got rid of, I don't know what they did there.
It's, okay, so that has not been resolved yet, okay.
Nope, I
And-
guess the meeting's still going back and forth, but I know they were fined and there was issues that came up and they paid the fines.
Yeah, and I thought they were gonna get the
So-
dumpsters in, so.
Yeah, well, I
And that's
don't-
what the question is, since that was in the news, people are saying, hey, they were found guilty, they paid the fines, how come we don't have dumpsters?
Yeah, I don't know if they were.
Let me just interject
Yeah,
a
go ahead,
second.
Mr.
The fines they paid weren't fines that they should have paid. Paid a lot less than what they should have paid,
It was a negotiation.
It was a negotiation
compromise,
that went
yeah.
through because of the amount.
which I wasn't very happy with.
The other question I have, I don't know how many of you saw the news
I'll
reports.
find out and get you more
Oh,
information.
good, yeah, because I am getting
I will
questions.
follow up with
Yeah,
that,
thank
yeah.
you. I think it was 2 weeks ago in Stanhope, there was a red fox had just all of a sudden went up to this guy in his yard and bit him in the ankle.
Rabied.
And yeah, it was rabid. And then it ran next door and went after those people's cat, got saliva all over the cat, and started, with the family. Then the fox ran off, and the animal control over there, they felt that they had gotten the appropriate fox, and they sent it down. It was rabid. But everybody in that family next door, including the cat, all got rabies shots, including the guy who got bit, because with the saliva,
Yeah, you
you
don't
just
know.
don't know. You have to start right away. So I know that I had a report from somebody 3 years ago up at Turkey Brook Park where we have the drainage pipes. There was a family of fox living in there, and I don't know if you've ever gone up there. You see them all the time, all over the place.
I get them in my
So,
yard.
yeah, I know. I get them in my yard too. I think one actually built a little den on my
Fox,
property.
bear, deer.
So I just want to just talk about it, because if anybody reads the minutes or sees, watches the stream, whatever, for the council meetings, just to be aware that, some of the fox act, like I was having a garage sale, I don't know, like 6, 7, 8 years ago. This fox was just walking in my driveway with everybody looking at stuff on the tables, and he's
Did he
very
buy
friendly.
anything?
He said he didn't bring his credit card that day. So,
That you have to be mindful of all these animals. They're all
Yes.
around. I mean,
So some of them, they've become more socialized because of their, so many houses by where, so I just think that everybody has to take a little bit more caution. They are really cute and everything, but they could be, and I don't know how often you think of if you saw a raccoon walking around, you'd think, oh my God, he might be rabid.
we see
but
a
would
lot
you-
of foxes around.
Yeah,
we
but
don't
would you think
about
that with a fox? Would you think a fox was rabid? So
The
that's why.
ones I've seen in my yard are mangy looking.
Oh, yeah, I know, real, exactly. So that's why I just wanted to talk about it, just try to get, shine some light on the subject.
Just a little awareness.
it. Thank you.
Yes,
That's-
thank you,
yep.
Greg, exactly. Thank you.
Anything else? Mr. Roman, anything on rec, did I ask you that already?
I
Rec
have
and
nothing-
Pride?
I have nothing on Pride. On Recreation, just a reminder, the Mount Olive Carnival is this Thursday.
Yes.
And we'll go through Sunday.
Wednesday.
Hopefully it won't
Wednesday.
rain Friday. It's supposed to
Wednesday.
rain Friday,
Wednesday.
90%. Hopefully it won't.
Wednesday.
It's supposed to rain on Friday?
Yeah.
Friday, heavy rain.
Heavy
Oh,
rain.
really?
They just changed it. It's not as bad
No,
now.
only 90% now, I think.
Light rain Friday.
Yeah.
Oh.
just a
Mr.
chance.
Stewart,
need an
anything on
umbrella.
MOTV
Just a
or Community
chance.
Action Panel?
Nothing. They're on recess until September.
Okay, thank you all. Fred, did you want to follow
I
up with this
would-
before we?
Thank you, Council President. I don't know what we did before cell phones, because I would have had to
Yeah,
call Gene
really.
at home. But I spoke to Gene again, and he indicated that, yes, there was an incident with the operation at, beyond the hours. He's addressed it. It's not happening anymore, nor will it. They will not operate on Sundays. That's in the developer's agreement. They're not supposed to. 9 to 6 on Saturday is their limitations now, based on the developer's agreement the way it is. So he said he has no issues as to getting them to comply. And as far as Ms. Laybaugh's question, it's down the road as far as the,
It's further down
it's a
the
different
road.
phase. Right now, this is
Yeah,
just the
I thought so.
preliminary clearing.
What about them directing traffic? to
No,
get-
that's required. So if something happened there, I mean, that's part of, you know, the responsibility of the developer, and.
But not
you
for
know,
them to do, they should call the police?
That's what they're supposed to do
Okay.
if there's any kind of traffic interruption and it's the
They probably don't wanna
developer's
pay the cost to
responsibility.
hire the
Well,
police.
you know, but it's a big enough project where, you know, so far, I mean, they've worked with us on any cost that they've had to bring forward. So I hope it either was isolated or maybe it was something that, you know, wasn't related to the project. But Gene said he would double check about that and make that clear.
Oh, good, thank you.
So we would just ask for a motion to amend the pre-developers agreement to include the installation of 600 linear feet of the water main within Village Way, the installation of the Route 46 water main and crossing and hydrants to provide fire protection to the township, and the installation of storm drainage and sanitary sewers for phases 1 and 3 through 3 of the development, with the explicit understanding that there'd be no operations on Sunday, no after-hours operations, and 9 to 6 on Saturday.
I'll make that motion.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Discussion?
Fred, for the pipe that they're going to put on the Route 46
Yes.
side, are they gonna put up signage ahead of time, plan alternate route, or, because they're gonna have to probably close down
Yes,
part of the highway?
all of that will be part of,
And that's
you know,
all part of
Gene's
it, right?
oversight,
Okay,
yes.
I figured it was, I just wanna
Absolutely.
make sure and
Double
ask.
check.
Yeah, they're even
Thank you.
responsible, of course, for the repair.
What they normally do,
Yes.
they'll do half of the roadway,
And
Correct.
fill that
Yeah,
in,
then go
Yes.
back.
so they can open it to traffic and then start on the other side.
It's still
You're
gonna
absolutely
create.
right.
That's what's
a-
normally
Recall
done.
that
Yeah.
being the discussion.
Right,
But
Tim?
Oh,
They're gonna
go
bore?
under, huh?
Oh,
They're gonna bore.
really?
That's even better.
Wow,
Better, so.
Even better.
Thank you, Tim.
wow.
Any
That's
other
interesting.
questions? Nope. So we have a roll call, please? We need a roll call. Yes.
Roll call, please.
Roll call, yeah.
Thank you, Council President.
Mrs. Laybow?
Yes.
Mr. Mania?
Yes.
Mr. Stewart?
Yes.
Mr. Roman?
Yes.
Mr. Nacastro?
Yes. Now I open to the meeting to the public. If anyone wishes to, please just get up, state your name and address for the record.
Hi, I'm Marianne Fiola. I live at 42 Main Street in Flanders. And I'm here tonight because there were people markings on our road on Main Street in Flanders. And it was coming to our attention that we were told that it was an engineering survey for the purpose of maybe sewers again. I thought when we did this in 2013 and we all signed letters stating our opposition or for it, that it was voted down. Now all of a sudden it's reappeared again. And I'm curious as, first of all, what's an engineering survey? What do they do for an engineering survey? And second of all, why is this brought up again? I understand, and where is this, if they're gonna, I see the markings up Main Street and down Main Street, but I understand it might be Patriots, down towards Patriots Way. I don't know, this is what I've heard, so this is what I wanna find out. And who's brought it all up again?
Bob, do you want to address that, or?
Yes, the engineer, the governing body, the end of last year, authorized the engineer to proceed with preliminary engineering work, basically doing a survey of property line and elevations for the potential of a sewer system along that area. So what he's done at this point in time is they're basically just developing a base map, and the critical point there is the base elevations, to see if in fact they can put in what's called a low head pressure system, special type of sewer system. That work is basically complete, field work's done. The engineer's been instructed that when that's done, there will be further discussions about the governing body. I was going to schedule a discussion at your next meeting. I've done a cost pro forma, cost benefit analysis. A lot of the data that was provided to you earlier this year was will be expanded and presented to you in a different fashion. Based upon the engineering survey, and that point, the governing body will make a determination of whether in fact it's going forward. We'll have better data than you had originally. But my understanding is, at the end of last year, the governing body authorized the engineer to proceed to gather preliminary data so they could verify the final decision as what's going to happen.
It was also limited in scope. It wasn't as big. When we
Right.
talked
The
originally,
area
it
in
was a whole
question
area.
is
This is
Park
Main
Avenue,
Main
both sides of
Street.
Park Avenue.
Right.
And Main Street from Park Avenue down to the entranceway to Crenshaw, the back door entrance into Crenshaw. There's a sewer manhole there, which was placed there when the sewer system was expanded for Flanders Crossing for expansion in the future. So that will be the only area they're looking at right now is the Park Avenue, Main Street from Park Avenue down to the entrance to Flanders Crossing, the dirt way, the pathway entrance down there.
Okay, if we're like in the middle of the street where they've made those markings and further on up towards the firehouse?
Main Street, the current plan is not to go on Main Street, not to go any further on Main Street than Park. In other words, it's basically Park Avenue, from Park Avenue back towards Flanders Crossing.
We haven't determined that yet. That was
That's the area, that's the area
to
that's
look
being done
at.
right now. And the main issue that he's looking at is really the elevations, because that will determine whether in fact they can do that with a low head pressure system. If the elevations are too great, it can't be done that way. So that's where they're trying to make a determination. That, coupled with the financial report that I'm going to present to the governing body next week, will give the governing body a much better understanding as to what your options are.
For that area that's.
For that area.
Correct.
Correct.
Park and down. that
Correct.
way.
That's correct.
Okay, so.
Yeah, nowhere else we were looking outside. Originally, it was a larger scope.
Yeah, it
But we
was.
brought it in more to the business area down there on that Main and Park.
I'm right on Main Street and like I'm right down from the firehouse, but you know.
Yeah, you would not be.
I know they wanted them over at Park and, you
Correct.
know,
Correct. The issue on Main Street, one of the issues that will be discussed next week is, one of the issues I'm looking at is, I'm looking at the economics of including that portion of Main Street, because with a larger number of sewer participants, the cost structure may change. So we're looking at that purely from a costing standpoint.
Yeah, but is this something that would be brought up again to be
Sure.
voted on?
Yes.
With the the residents of that?
Yes.
Yeah, it's for discussion.
Yes.
We didn't, there's no
If they go
decision
forward
made.
with this, there
Yeah,
will
right,
be,
right.
if they go forward with this, and they follow the recommendation we'll be making next week, there will be specific public hearings on this before they go further.
Okay.
Joe?
Ms. Lehman?
I think she's asking, will the residents have a chance to
Well,
vote
the
on
residents,
this?
like last time when this
Yeah.
all came up.
Yeah.
There was opposition to it, some people were for it. So they ended up doing a questionnaire survey.
Correct.
And it was certified, we had to send back, and we voted on it.
Right.
And the majority ruled that they did not want the.
There was another questionnaire that I am told was sent out in December, but it was to a smaller area.
Right.
It was
Yeah,
just
we-
in
Right.
Park
Yeah,
Avenue.
we didn't get that.
That's right.
Because it wouldn't include you. It was only in the areas that we
So you
wanted to
wouldn't have gotten
include.
that, you're outside the area.
Correct.
Okay. All right, okay.
Yeah, we'll be informed. Nothing is,
But there will be, my goal would be, at the next meeting, I'll have a report to the governing body that I'm hoping we're going to discuss relative to the cost-benefit ratio of the work being done.
I have a question.
just say your name and please for the
Oh, I'm
record.
sorry.
That's right. That's fine.
Donna
Name.
DiNapoli, 44 Main Street in Flanders.
Sorry, Donna.
I have a question.
Excuse
You
me.
were talking
Last
about.
name?
Last name.
What?
Last name. I'm sorry, your last name.
Donna DiNapoli,
Thank you.
44 Main Street, Flanders. I have a question. You were just talking about extending that perhaps up to Main Street? I thought that was part of the study
That's
you had
one of the
just
issues
said.
I'm looking at, purely to develop the economic database.
Because I don't know if you're aware that most of the people on Main Street are elderly. We're retired. Most of us are retired. We are limited income. To put in sewage and assess us, like the last time was $50,000 to $60,000 assessment. We cannot afford that. There is no way that community.
The numbers that we're looking at are dramatically different.
It's still, you're looking at someone forcing us to do something at a cost that we don't have the dollars to do that has retired people. And we are on fixed incomes. We don't have a cash flow coming in that some of the other people that may be pushing for this do have that. So we want to take that into consideration, that there is an economic impact to the people on Main Street in Flanders. So-
Definitely will. There's no question. That's why we were trying to get it down to a limit.
We're just very concerned that this is going to be something that's going to be pushed down our throats, and we prefer that this would be voted on and by the citizens that live there. So we want to make sure that that's going to happen.
Mr. Roman?
Well, the last time the reason that got voted down was precisely, at least from my standpoint, was the economic impact.
That's huge.
So I would,
Yeah.
you know, again, I voted for moving this project forward because I think it would be irresponsible of definitely myself, I don't know, I'll speak for everybody else, to just outright say no to a project without knowing its full costs and benefits. So what we are definitely going forward is to find out, you know, on a much smaller scale, what are going to be the costs, and because it's, you know, it's a smaller project, you know, the overall impact, because even though there is an impact in putting them in, there is also going to be an upside and a benefit.
Well,
And unfortunately, you know, that area where we're looking at Seward, it's something that eventually has to get done because of the septics and cesspools that are in that area.
And you're talking about Park.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so when we talk about, yeah. Do you want to say something?
Again, it's only in the exploratory stage
Yeah, we're
right
not,
now.
there's no decisions made yet. All
There's
this
no
has to come out.
decisions have been made.
We just need the
Right.
facts.
My question is, it's Sandra Albertson.
Sorry, name and address. for the
Sandra
record.
Albertson, 36 Main Street.
Thank you.
Just for my own edification, I want to find out, twice we had surveys where we were asked if we wanted the sewers. Once in 2013, and prior to that we had it. And I can't understand why we're pursuing this again. Somebody can give me the rationale behind. I just, if the owners of the properties have already indicated twice that we don't want the sewers, why are we pursuing this? And who's paying for this survey? I'm curious why this came up all of a sudden again. Because we were told back in 2013 this was done. I mean, they were going to pursue the Park Avenue down,
Correct.
but on Main Street it was done. And then all of a sudden now it's surfacing again. I just don't understand why it's being brought up.
It was, I believe it was just brought up again because of the fact of the areas of the Park Avenue we were talking about. Some of those areas we were getting issues with the cesspools and all. So we wanted to try and streamline it down to see what the costs were. Again, it was the same reason as Mr. Roman said, we did not want to go through with this because the costs were extraordinary, were ridiculous when they came up.
Right.
And it's not right to impose that unless there was something that absolutely necessary to do. But we looked at this to say we need to look at this on a smaller scale to start, at least to see if we could bring that area into the sewer area, because eventually, like Mr. Roman said, this is going to have to be done at some point. And the costs just keep going up. But if we can do something smaller at this point to tap into what we have, and it's reasonable, and everybody's, you know, okay with that. That's, like we said, this is all exploratory. It was just a matter of, we really wanted, last time was such a large scope that I think it took us all by surprise. I don't think we were really looking to do that massive of all this kind of scale. And we just, you know, why didn't we scale it down, which is what we're doing now, to see what the cost would actually be. And as Bob said, you know, the costs are a lot substantially less, at least from what we're looking at. I don't know what they are yet.
Now, I'm assuming that you said it has to be done anyway. You were talking about Park Avenue down?
Eventually, I'm assuming, yeah. We're
Okay.
assuming it's going to be.
So Main Street is basically off limits because, as I said, we were told that after 2013, we weren't bringing this up anymore. So I just wanted to make sure.
Mr. Roman?
Well, well, one of the reasons why the project last time was so expensive was because of the elevations. There were a lot more infrastructure that was required, some pumping, you know, great issues.
The issue last time was the original one that I've been reading files going, yes, it had to be a major pump station.
Yep.
The issue now is to put restrict it to those areas that we can do what's called by a low head pressure system, which is a similar system that's done on Bud Lake on the back side of the hills, where you basically pump up the top of the hill and bring it gravity flow. Same type of system. So yes, that's why the elevations are critical in terms of what can happen. The only reason I'm looking at the rest of Main Street would be if by adding those in there, whether there's an economies of scale, which may make it more feasible overall, but that's an issue that we'll discuss next week.
And again, I think one of the
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
One of the responsibilities that I see is when residents are coming forward with health problems, which, you know, failing septics and cesspools are a problem. You know, it's something that we can't ignore. We can't ignore it, because, you know, let's say 2 out of 10 people say they can't afford it. It's a public health issue. You know,
Understood, but
I can understand that you're not being affected now by it, and I don't want to make any decision whatsoever that adversely impacts you or any of your neighbors.
Right.
But unfortunately, there are some other of your neighbors that have been asking for years for sewers because they have an issue and they're asking for relief from the township,
On Main Street?
mostly on
Some
Park
on Main
Place.
Street.
Okay,
which is
all
why-
right, then I understand.
Which is why we went with this, at least with this survey of the much smaller project.
Okay.
So it would be, and it would be also, it would be the reverse also. If you were begging, for sewers to be put in place, and your neighbors on the other side of the street were not, we're not going to ignore your issues.
Right, but as long as you take into consideration that the people on Main Street have been maintaining their sewers, and some have new, a septic, and have new septic, and we've already indicated that we don't want this. As long as you take that into consideration and surveys come out, that's
Without
fine
a
with
doubt,
me.
we just want to keep it, like we said, looking
Right.
at it. Bob's just looking for other options, doesn't mean we're going that route.
Okay, that's a great.
Ms. Laybow and then Mr. Manning.
I just want to say, like, no areas, like, I wouldn't consider any area down there as off limits at this point. We're trying to find out what the cost is going to be. And that's the biggest problem, I think, the last time was there was all these estimates of what it might be, but there was no actual study done to tell us.
There was a study done, is my understanding.
No, they didn't. It was not a comprehensive study like this one that gives us the actual financial information.
So when will this study be done, and when can we come back again and see what these results of this are?
Bob said in 2
My goal is
weeks.
to have a discussion of this on the 25th.
On the 25th of this month?
Yeah.
Yeah, the next council meeting.
We should.
A preliminary review based upon the data we've got thus far, with an outline as to following the methodology that was used in the Bud Lake system. Using that methodology, carrying it forward to this system gives you a framework in which you can look at that, which is different from the presentation you did before, which was basically wasn't in a framework.
Also, there are some people on Main Street who want the sewers as
There
well.
may be some
Yeah.
people on Main Street, but the majority had voted prior that we didn't. And when Bob is talking about cost benefits and doing Main Street, that makes the cost a little more satisfying for the people on Main. It doesn't make the cost satisfying for the people on Main Street. If you increase if I have to have an assessment of $20,000 or $30,000, I'm never going to get return on those dollars because my house is never going to be worth that much money. Sewage or septic or whatever, it's never going to increase to that scale.
And those are all the things that we'll be figuring out once we find out what the cost will be.
Okay, so you'll see me again on the 25th.
Yeah.
We will have it there.
Well, we want to send notices to everybody too, to let them know when it's.
I don't know.
I think this is too preliminary.
It's just preliminary. They can
it's
come
too
and
preliminary?
obviously hear it and ask questions.
If in fact, after the
But
meeting
we're not
on the
voting.
25th, you want to
Yeah.
go forward, then it'd be more appropriate to have
Correct.
an informational meeting, but the 25th is still in the educational
Yeah,
process.
there is no vote going to happen on the 25th to do
No,
it,
I know
so you
there's
don't
no
have to
vote
worry.
happening on the 25th, and I understand it's a preliminary of what the
Right.
survey comes up with, but I'd still like to be present for
Oh, you
that.
can- yeah, you're welcome.
My other thing is, if
It's
the
a public
town,
meeting, you can come to any
if the
meeting.
town is interested in doing
Unless
this,
there's litigation, then
why
it's
wouldn't the town be
closed.
picking up the cost instead of putting the burden on the citizens of the town?
Well, this is all, this will all be through this study. We'll go through that, and that's what we'll
If you look at the
determine.
Bud Lake system, in the
Well,
Bud Lake system, the residents paid approximately 70% of the cost.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't have 70% of whatever it is.
I didn't
I'm
either.
just saying is that what I've tried to do is to structure this system in using that as a precedent, and there will be numbers presented as to what these probable cost estimates would be based upon the history of the Bud Lake system. Using that as, since the Bud
And
Lake
so what
system
did the
was
Bud Lake-
3,000 residents were involved in the Bud Lake system, that's a good precedent to use
So-
to establish.
But there's not 3,000 people in our little
But the
neighborhood.
issue is the precedent was established.
So what was the cost of Bud Lake? It was 75 or 70%. What did people have to, what did they have to
The cost of the
put?
Bud Lake person in 1995 for a residence who had a septic system was $7,521.
Okay, and they're talking 20 years ago.
That's 20 years ago. Plus, on top of that, they had the cost of connection to the system.
Right.
And the cost of clearing out. So my guess is that they spent about $10,000 per unit, and
20
they
years ago.
allowed that, the governing body allowed the $7,500 to be paid over 17 years by an assessment district.
I'll be dead in 17 years, but that's okay. But, I mean, seriously.
But anyway,
But
the issue is,
you're
have to
comparing
witness
something
the
that happened
numbers.
20 years ago. I don't know how that comparable is correct.
That's exactly what I've been doing.
And what, are you adding inflation onto that, and cost of labor and everything else
We have
like
done some
that?
analysis we'll discuss next week as to how we updated those numbers.
All right, that'll be
Yeah,
great.
the 25th, we'll have the numbers, and then we'll be able to discuss it further once we have them. Mr. Manning?
Just a point of information, if you have to replace your septic system, you're talking between $25,000 and $30,000
$40,000.
just to replace your septic system.
That's why I have it serviced every year, so I don't have to have that cost.
Just a point of information.
Anything else? Anyone else? Oh, go ahead, Mr. Joe. That's all right. No problem.
My house was built in 1974. I have all sewer lines in my street. I paid for it. I don't have sewers. And yet, Bell Court, which is half a block from me, is the highest point in Mount Olive. Everything flows down. That's why I live on Karen Place. So everything else floods to New York. I'm still on dry land. So when you talk about a sewer system, I'm confused why we don't even have one in where we are in Bud Lake. I do know, and if you go through your records, when the county wanted to build the jail in Mount Olive, the deal was you let us build the jail here, and the county was going to pay for the entire sewering of Bud Lake. But the township didn't want the jail here. And I can understand that, because they break out of jail, they're going to go to the Bud Lake Diner and have breakfast. Maybe. But we have sewer lines. I paid for them. They're still sitting there, but we have septic systems. So you gotta, I feel for these people. I don't know what added on to the cost of my house in 1974. Maybe Mr. Mania remembers back in those days. But we have sewers, but we don't have sewers. So just be very careful what you do.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public wish to be heard? Just go up, state your name and address, please.
Mr. Bonte, how nice to see you.
My name is Richard Bonte, Bud Lake, New Jersey. I had some comments that I wanted to address to the council first, but I just want to bring up one other subject regarding what Ms. LeBeau brought up regarding solar panels.
Yeah.
This building was built in the late 90s. I stood before this council at that time and recommended that we put solar on these roofs because all of these roofs face the proper position. And it is beyond me that we are now in 2017 and the township has never moved to do that. I've been in the solar energy business since 1977. We operate a warehouse in town here. We're one of the largest distributors of solar thermal equipment in the Northeast. And I'm not here to sell my product to the town because I would never engage in business with the town because I think it would be a conflict of interest. But I think the town needs to seriously investigate doing that at this building and using taxpayer money to do that because the return to the taxpayer is at this point in time less than 5 years between what are called the renewable energy credits that the town would earn as well as the savings. There's no reason why that with the size of the roof on this building and the electrical consumption in this building that you probably couldn't reduce your consumption in this building by 80% on an annual basis. So I would seriously recommend that the town look into doing this. And if you need to float a bond to do it, you'll still come out way ahead because you'll pay that bond off in 5 years. Now the real reason I'm here, and I just want to give a handout to each one of you so I can then discuss this.
Want us to pass it down, or do you want? There you go. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Richard, it's been a long time.
It's been a while.
How are you?
Very good, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Here you go. You need another?
Hello, thank you.
There you go. Everybody's got it.
And the real reason I'm here, and some of you may remember from many years ago, the fact that I keep weather records in the township. And I've kept forms like this since January of 1972 to date, record daily temperatures on a daily basis. And for many years, I've heard about, quote, global warming, and was not a believer. But over the last few years, I have become a believer. And what I wanted to just show and bring to your attention is, if you look at this chart, if we establish the baseline period of 1972 to 2001 and compare those average maximum temperatures, which is the first column, and the average minimum temperatures, which is the fourth column, for that entire period of time, and compare them to the last 15 years. In the green column, it shows how much warmer it has been on the maximum temperatures and the minimum temperatures in the last 15 years versus the previous 30 years. And the thing that's most significant is the minimum temperatures, which is the nighttime temperatures. You'll notice that in every month of the year, over the last 15 years, the minimum temperatures have averaged significantly warmer than the previous 30 years. And when I say significant, typically a difference of 2 or 3 tenths of a degree is considered significant. We've averaged on an annual basis 1.8 degrees warmer at nighttime over the last 15 years than the previous 15 years. Another way to look at that is, if you look at the 10 years in the 1970s, we went below zero at nighttime 40 times. That was considered pretty much the normal. From the period 2007 to 2017, we've only gone below zero at night 15 times. Even more significant is, if you look at each month of the year, January, February, March, April, and you look at over the last, since 1926, we have data for this area, and I've personally kept data since 1972. If you look at that period of time and look at the warmest January, the warmest February, the warmest March, for that long period of time, 7 out of the 12 months, the warmest months, have been set in the last 15 years. There's been a significant change in the climate here in Budd Lake as well as the country. Our governor removed the state of New Jersey from the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative 8 years ago, which you may or may not be aware of, which cost the state millions of dollars in funding that could have gone to clean energy infrastructure in the state. Other states like New York and Massachusetts are booming right now in terms of installation of measures to reduce greenhouse gas initiatives. Since our governor was elected in 2009, $13 billion of your money that you pay in your electric bill every month that's supposed to go to the Clean Energy Fund to fund projects to reduce greenhouse gas initiatives and encourage conservation and solar energy has instead gone to the state budget to balance the budget. This action is in total violation of what the legislature required to pass this law to take this money from your electric bill every month. And now our president is condemning the environment to third world status by promoting coal and weakening protection of our drinking water and our rivers. So since our leaders are not going to protect us, it becomes an issue for each and every one of us in the public to do what we need to do at the city, county, and state level to make the people in Washington understand what we, the people, really want in terms of reducing greenhouse gases, helping our climate, keeping our water clean. So what I'm here for tonight is to request that the council pass a resolution. And that resolution would state its beliefs in, first of all, the Paris Accord. Secondly, that New Jersey rejoin the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative. And thirdly, that the money that is being collected for the Clean Energy Fund is released back to the purpose that it was designated by the state legislature. Now, I realize that this is not a town issue. But it is an issue for all of us to address. And unless every town, county, and state passes resolutions like this, it's not going to happen. You're probably aware that many large cities in the U.S. have already passed resolutions supporting the Paris Accord. And while they may just seem symbolic, eventually these small stones will create ripples that eventually will create a wave and move our national government to the leadership that it should have. So I respectfully request that you seriously consider that we take this action. It doesn't cost the town anything, but it would put, first of all, it would put Mount Olive at the forefront of any other town in the county. And maybe other towns will follow suit, and then the county will. You may be aware that Union County, 2 weeks ago, passed a similar resolution. So we wouldn't be the first in the state, but we would be the first in the county. So again, I think the evidence shows that we're moving towards some long-standing changes, and public policy needs to start at the ground level and within the small towns. So that's my request. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate all the research as well.
Yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Roman?
I respectfully need to address some of the issues Mr. Bonte raised. You know, one, I applaud you for all the work that you did and one, taking in temperatures. I mean, that's something that's awesome. But I think from a statistical point of view, I think it's not proper to extrapolate the climate of a planet that's, you know, millions of years old on, you know, a couple decades worth. Because if you were projecting this out further, in about 50 years, you know, we'd be having 80-degree weather in January, which I don't think that would be I don't think that's the case. You know, unfortunately, I do believe the climate is changing, as it always has. A few thousands of years ago, there were glaciers covering this very area, so climate did change. Do I believe that we should be stewards of our environment? Of course. You know, there's no difference between the air that I breathe and the air that you breathe, and I'm all for clean air, clean water. I just think that whatever we do has to be a measured response. You know, gas cars are one of the more major polluters of CO2, and if you driven any car back in 1997 and compare it to today's car, you are putting out much less emissions, and that's all due to technology that, you know, the market has determined to improve. In about 20 years, you'll be driving electric cars. Why? Because that is more than likely the way the technology is going, and you'll be making that choice. I am not a fan of resolutions that are feel-good resolutions. I think this governing body should always enact legislation and resolutions that are meant to create an action and something that it can be done. I know my opinion is probably not you know, the most popular of opinions, but if all we ever wanted to do is just put out things that feel good, that accomplish nothing for the residents of Mount Olive, we can be addressing resolutions you know, every time we have a meeting. So I am definitely for making sure that we are stewards of our environment because we all embrace it. I just think that we should be making actions that are impactful and are not just to make us feel better. That's all I have.
Anyone else? Yes, sir. You can go back up.
I will agree that 15 years or 30 years does not make for meaningful data. Other than it is interesting to note that there has been this significant change in the last 15 years versus the previous 30. And it does support what everybody is seeing everywhere else on the planet. I believe that resolutions, although they may sound like they feel good, reflect the policy and opinion of not only those of you that are on this board, but the citizens of this township. And I think that the citizens of this township, and probably most of you on this board, are for clean air and are for clean water. if the present government that we have and direction that is being promoted from Washington continues, we'll all be driving coal-powered cars. And yet, the Kentucky Coal Museum has switched over to solar. So, if, Mr. Roman, you want to do something that is not feel-good, but has a substantial impact and you can justify it to the taxpayer of this town, then remember my opening comments regarding what Mrs. LeBeau said, and that is that you form a committee to investigate putting PV on this building to reduce the amount of electricity that's consumed in this building, because that won't be just a feel-good measure. That'll be a positive taxpayer savings over the next 20 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone else from the public wish to be heard? Seeing none, close to the public. Any council comments? Ms. Leba?
Just want to thank the administration and our recreation department for the carnival plans for this week. And I know a lot of people look forward to it. And hopefully everybody has a good time, safe time. Yes, hopefully.
Mr. Mania?
Ditto.
Mr. Stewart?
Yeah, special shout out and recognition to the Bud Lake Fire Department and to Jersey Girl Brewery for a large-scale training exercise they performed Sunday at the brewery. It was just absolutely phenomenal for a man-down training. They put a smoke machine into the whole back operation, and then they walked through with the younger members of that crew and worked with them to improve their results in a safe environment. What a great job they did.
Thank you, Mr. Roman.
I have nothing.
And I have nothing. Thank you all for coming this evening. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you all.
The state is taking money out of our electric bill and not using it for how it was intended.
And it's wrong.
It's definitely wrong. So how do we find out if that's really?
Contact the legislature.
Well, you're a
That's me. I'm a legislative committee.
Thank you.
I will contact the legislature.
Find out.
That's the way to go.
Yes, find out how did it happen.